Hi, I'm Ira Wallace with Southern Exposure Seed Exchange here at Acorn Community Farm, and I'm for the soil because the soil is the basis of our agriculture. Soil grows our plants, and I love good soil.
Hello, everybody. I'm your host, Jeff Ishee, and if you can't tell, I'm just a little bit excited. It's springtime, and this is a time of the year when farmers or gardeners are generally excited about the change of seasons. We're eager to get back out into the vegetable garden. We're eager to get back out into the field, plant corn, plant all the various crops around Virginia, maybe plant a tree. By the way, this is an excellent time of the year to plant a tree. And we're going to get to our podcast in just a few moments with a very special guest. But first, I wanted to remind everyone of our website, forthesoil.org. That is the digit forthesoil.org. And there you will find the 4 core principles of soil health management, including number 1, keep soil covered, number 2, minimize soil disturbance, number 3, maximize living roots, and number 4, energize with diversity. Oh, and I wanted to point out one more thing that is new on our website, forthesoil.org, and that is our blog. Right up at the top of the page there on the menu bar on the far right-hand side, you'll see the word blog. Just click on that, and there's a lot of articles and stories about how you can improve your soil health and just a diverse array of stories and blog entries. And thanks, by the way, to our volunteers who help us to coordinate this, especially Sarah Koth. Sarah, you're doing a fantastic job. Thank you so much for everything you do, as well as to all of the volunteers involved with For the Soil. So once again, visit the website at forthesoil.org, and while you're there, take the pledge. That's also on the menu bar at the top of the page. Well, time's a wasting. Let's get to the podcast. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of For the Soil, a conversation. I'm your host, Jeff Ishee, and Eric, I am really excited to welcome to our show a special guest today. He has a lot of experience with soil health and also with the Virginia Master Gardener Program. Of course, gardening is a passion for me. It's a trait passed on to me by my father. And I was fortunate to be a garden columnist for 19 years for the Sunday newspaper in Stanton, Virginia, and on occasion, USA Today. So when you mention gardening, you've got my full attention. Eric, would you do us the favor of introducing our special guest today?
Yes, Jeff, thank you. And we're pleased to have Thomas Bolles with us with Prince William County's Extension Office. And I've worked with Thomas through the years. And as you said, Jeff, we're very pleased to have Thomas with us. And Thomas, if you could tell us a little bit about yourself. And one thing that when we think about soil health as well as water quality, the need for all of us to contribute to solutions. And so we're really glad to have you on the show.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here. So I'm the ag agent in Prince William County, and our county is a largely suburban county. So that means that I deal with homeowners much more than I deal with agricultural producers, although I do deal with them as well. Soil health is something that traditionally has been, it's the farmer's responsibility to protect the soil, but it's really everybody's responsibility to protect the soil. And there's a lot of good and bad in terms of damage to the soil that's done by non-farmers as well as by certain farming practices.
Thomas, I'm curious about how you interact with the public when it comes to soil health. We all grew up in an age where you called the local extension office, you got an agent on the phone, and you asked them a question. But now is a lot of that online? Do you get more emails, for instance, or do you get phone calls?
I would say we get a lot more emails than we do phone calls. We have a Master Gardener help desk, which is our electronic sort of funnel for questions about all things horticulture, although they also deal with some wildlife stuff.
And with that, Thomas, we've been focusing on the 4 core soil health principles. How do you engage people with sort of the basic understanding of soil health, with keeping it covered, minimizing disturbance and such?
Well, we look at it in 2 ways. One is in a gardening, particularly vegetable gardening way, and then the other way is urban nutrient management planning for turf. And so from a turf perspective, we have a local part of the Healthy Virginia Lawns program, which is a program where master gardeners go out and measure and sample soil. And then an urban nutrient management plan is written based on DCR standards, Department of Conservation standards. And that in that lane, it's a matter of helping people understand that they can work with their soil and work with their turf to apply appropriate amounts of appropriate nutrients at the right time, to save them money and not over fertilize, not over pesticide, and just to build the soil. With that, a lot of focus is on using compost to increase organic matter. On the gardening side of things, compost is another big element we talk about a lot with homeowners. We talk about increasing that organic matter so that there's more moisture retention in a rain event, more infiltration. We also talk a lot about cover crops, allowing them or encouraging them to plant when they otherwise wouldn't. So for a lot of time, that's planting late fall into the spring with something like rye or crimson clover or barley or forage radish. But sometimes that's in summer where they've got a block, and that allows the soil to keep working for them and keep building throughout the whole year, and maximizing that solar energy coming down and maximizing that ecosystem in the ground.
Very interesting. Tell us about the Master Gardener program. How do you get that title, Master Gardener? It sounds cool.
So the Master Gardener program is a volunteer program, and typically it varies a little bit county to county in how it's done, but basically Master Gardeners go through a training period, and then they do an internship period with a certain amount of hours, and then to retain that title, they typically do 20, again, it depends on the county a little bit, 20 plus hours of volunteer service throughout the year.
Very good. So it is available statewide, and I guess other states also have Master Gardener programs.
Yes, Master Gardener program, or the concept, started in Washington State, I believe. But there are Master Gardener programs in pretty much every county. In some of the counties, it's a Master Gardener program for 2 or 3 counties, depending on population.
It's interesting that you mentioned compost. Over the last 5 or 6 years, making compost has become a passion of mine, a hobby, if you will. During spring, summer, and fall, I'm always out in my backyard making compost, and I happen to know some poultry producers and dairy farmers, so I have an adequate supply of nitrogen, of manure. And then I also tap into our local city, the Parks and Recreation Department, and they have a supply of deciduous leaves that they go around and collect every fall. And then that's available free to the public. I just go in and fill up the back of my pickup truck with leaves, and I commence to making compost, mixing in grass clippings and other organic matter as I see fit. But one thing I've discovered, Thomas, is I've applied compost on my lawn this last summer, and I was amazed at the difference in my turf. Can you talk? Do you get a lot of questions about turf being in a suburban environment?
We do. And, compost is one of those things that we really encourage for people to put on their lawns. The downside to compost is because it's not, what's the word I'm looking for? It's not uniform in particle size. It's not like you can throw it in the spreader and spread it out evenly and nice. But everybody I talk to who uses compost on their turf really has noticed a difference. And I really think that particularly in areas where you've got compacted soil, it's a good way to reinvigorate the soil.
Thomas, but one of the other principles that we've been emphasizing is the diversity. That can include crop rotations, cover crops, livestock, whether that's ruminants or pastured poultry. In the urban environment, personally, I've been trying to introduce more like white clover into my lawn, partly because it's a source of nitrogen, but also really try to provide some habitat for honeybees and other pollinators. And could you speak to that?
Typically, when we talk about diversity in the lawn, usually it's adding clover and white clover. And sometimes that's a hard sell with consumers. And it's kind of interesting because, before World War II, your standard seed mix included grasses and clovers. And then, for me, it's once we started having color golf on TV, because then you had that pure green carpet, and that's what everybody aspired to. So clover kind of fell out of favor, and we really encourage it because there aren't a whole lot. It's hard to make a lawn more than a monoculture if you're just dealing with grasses. But we encourage that quite a bit. I think one of the issues is changing the landscapers' point of view, because landscapers have a big influence on our consumers. And so I think, encouraging them to recommend clover. The downside for them is that, well, okay, that means that, we're not going to be adding as much fertilizer. We're not going to get paid. And this goes back to the compost thing. I tell them, we'll make a compost application. It's going to make the lawn look good. You're still providing a service. You're still going to get paid for something, but you're going to make your client happy.
Yeah. And clover is also good for the honeybees. I belong to a social media group on Facebook called Lawn Care Nuts. And there was an interesting discussion back several months ago about clover in lawns. And I was an advocate for clover in lawns. Matter of fact, I've established a portion of my yard around the fruit trees as a clover inclusion area. I may use herbicides on other parts of the lawn, but I don't use any herbicides around those fruit trees because I want clover and I want pollinators around those fruit trees, and they'll help me to have healthier soil leads to healthier turf, leads to healthier fruit.
Well, and the other thing that people don't realize is that, clover is a legume, so it's putting nitrogen into the soil. And so you've got about roughly a pound of nitrogen that you're adding. If you've got 25%-ish clover in your yard, you're adding about a pound of nitrogen, and that's money saving, that's time saving, because you don't have to put it out. Nature's doing the work for you.
Yeah. Clover is a good thing. Eric, any final question?
Sure, Thomas. I know Prince William, there seems like there's more and more interest in integrating livestock. What are you seeing in sort of the suburban urban area?
We have some small farms where they're doing bits and pieces with livestock. A lot of it's chickens. We do have some people doing small ruminants, not as much cattle because that takes space. But there are places for that. We try and encourage people to diversify, and to know the market. We have some big cattle producers in the county, but when it comes down to it, there's not the room to incorporate livestock the way there is in agriculture. and that's on a smaller scale.
I have a question that perhaps we can knock out two birds with one stone, and that's about soil test for the suburban homeowner who wants a healthy lawn, and also encourage people to use the master gardener as a resource. So talk a little bit about the basics of the soil test with Virginia Tech, and then also maybe getting a master gardener involved to help you interpret the results of that test.
To me, the importance of having a soil test is to have a baseline of what's going on, and then you can make informed decisions. The other important thing to me about soil tests is if the pH is off. I mean, you can get a pH meter, and assuming that it's calibrated correctly, you can get the pH of the soil, but that doesn't help you. You either know that it's right or it's not right. Going through a lab like Virginia Tech, they will give you information on how much lime or sulfur you need to adjust that pH up or down to get it to where it needs to be. So to me, that's one of the basics. I encourage people to make sure that they're soil testing on a regular basis so they know how their pH is working, if nothing else. I find that the soil test results, when they come back, they're not as user friendly to folks who aren't used to dealing with soil chemistry. And so I encourage folks to give me a call, or if they're out of county, give their local extension agent a call. Depending on the master gardener. So one of the things about the master gardener program is the level of training varies a little bit by county. So if there's a master gardener who's good with soils, they can interpret it fairly well. But you can always encourage, a master gardener, if they can't give you a good interpretation, they can certainly point to somebody who can.
Well, Eric and Thomas, it has been a pleasure having you on this episode of For the Soil. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me,
Jeff.
Great advice from Thomas Bolles with Virginia Cooperative Extension. Wanted to remind everyone that For the Soil, a conversation is made possible with funding support from the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation and the Agua Fund. Other partners include the U.S. Department of Agriculture's Natural Resources Conservation Service, Virginia Cooperative Extension, Virginia State University, Virginia Department of Conservation and Recreation, and partners of the Virginia Soil Health Coalition. Views expressed on this podcast are those of each individual guest. To download a copy of this or any other episode, visit the website forthesoil.org. And if you have a specific question about soil health, contact your local extension office, your local USDA service center, or a Soil and Water Conservation District office. Music used during today's program was provided courtesy of Jackson F. Smith and Mr. Ruiz, all rights reserved. For the Soil, a conversation is produced by On the Farm Radio in collaboration with Virginia Tech. I'm your host, Jeff Ishee.